Welcome aboard the Just Help Out Mindset podcast, where your compassionate guide, Nicole Venegas, takes the helm. Brace yourselves for an immersive experience as we delve into the heart of crucial conversations. We're set to explore the intricacies of suicide prevention, navigate the landscape of mental health, and boldly shatter the stigma surrounding therapy. This isn't just a podcast, it's an odyssey of resilience and understanding. Join us on this transformative journey filled with stories, insights, and a collective mission to create a world that embraces the strength of empathy and helping others. Fasten your seatbelts. We're about to embark on a voyage towards a healthier, more compassionate existence.
Welcome, listeners. I'm your host, Nicole Venegas. This podcast is named after our nonprofit called the Just Help Out Foundation, which is located in Tampa, Florida, and was created from a pure tragedy. My brother died by suicide on May 3rd of 2022, and that horrific day will be forever etched in my brain. A few days before he did it, he said he was feeling hopeless, so our nonprofit organization helps anyone in the community who may be feeling hopeless. And everyone that we help in the community is called a Joey. So far, after being around for 1 year, we have been able to help almost 50 Joeys since our inception from homelessness, hunger, domestic violence, and mental health. The purpose of this podcast is to explore mental health in its entirety and to let everyone know you are not alone. If you think you are the only one suffering from anxiety, depression, OCD, panic disorder, agoraphobia, I challenge you to think again. I am also a mental health professional and see clients daily who are strong and courageous, and they have decided to talk about their feelings and process unturned stones in their lives. I hope you will do the same with me here today. Welcome to episode 13 of the Just Help Out Mindset podcast. I want to congratulate all the listeners because if you're listening to this, that means you have listened to our first full season of the Just Help Out Mindset podcast. Today, lucky number 13 is going to wrap up season 1, and I could not be more excited to introduce the guest we have in our studio today to talk about a very, very important topic. The premise of this podcast is to break the stigma of mental health. Today in the studio, live with me, I have Zeke Samples. With over 25 years in the health and wellness industry, and once a weight loss patient himself, Zeke has overcome the past physical limiting challenges of scoliosis and kyphosis of the spine during his teenage years, to now lead a life dedicated to helping others achieve their health and wellness goals. Zeke is a past national champion and runner-up world champion in the WBFF Muscle Model competition, and pairs that experience and lifelong knowledge to his personal commitment to help patients of all ages needing nutritional expertise and guidance. In his Genesis Wellness platform, Zeke targets the body chemistry and lowers toxicity levels in the body, helping those patients develop weight loss sustainability patterns while finding maintenance in all aspects of food, body weight, and balance. His primary focus is to change the way his patients view and manage their health by educating, shifting paradigms, and executing consistency. I think everyone needs a Zeke in their life. Zeke, welcome. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Nicole. It's great to be here.
I am so excited to have you here as I'm reading. I mean,
It's funny you said that because one of my first marketing ladies that I hired when I was younger, she said, I have this perfect coin phrase for you. And I was like, okay, what's that? She goes, I've been Zeked. And I'm like, I don't think that's going to go over well.
She probably did want to be Zeked. I know for our listeners, you can't see us because season 1's only audio. Season 2 will be visual. We're going to have Zeke back so you can see Zeke with the physique. But Zeke is so inspirational, and the things that you've been through and all of the challenges you've pushed past and your amazing focus. I am so excited for you to share all this with our listeners because, of course, mental health and fitness, really, your mental fitness goes right hand in hand with your physical fitness. So tell the listeners a little bit about how you first became interested in fitness competitions and how did the whole journey begin?
Wow. So it certainly didn't begin from childhood. I was an overweight child and wasn't really taught about nutrition or exercise. I came from an athletic parenthood. My mom was an alternate on the Olympic swim team, and Dad played in the NFL a short period. But when I was younger, I was kind of forced into sports in a sense because Dad played pro football. He wanted me to play. So, but back then they went by weight. They didn't go by age. So I was a 130-pound, 9-year-old that was playing against 11 and 12-year-olds and just grew to hate the sport because I started getting pushed out of, the play every time because I was just so much weaker in muscle strength. So that kind of held in my mind in my future. And as I progressed, I actually got diagnosed with scoliosis and kyphosis in my spine, which is the curvature of the spine in different directions. One's front to back and one's left to right. And from there, I had to learn really quick about nutrition and exercise, or else I'd have metal rods put in my spine. So,
wow. So when did they tell you that you would have to have metal rods put in?
that was at age 14 and a half. So I had just was awarded a scholarship at a prestigious boarding school in Virginia, and it was an all boys school. You weren't allowed cars on campus or anything like that. So that was the time I was told that I'd have to wear this back brace. So it was kind of a challenging time for me.
So 14 and a half, that is a very, very crucial age in adolescence. And you're going to have to wear a back brace. Talk to the listeners about your feelings, how your peers treated you, and things that you kind of went through in that stage of your life.
That stage of my life was tough at first because the school was very sports oriented. We had a 9-hole golf course. It was Andrew Jackson's old estate, so it was thousands of acres, and a lot of very wealthy kids went to the school as well. So you always had to play a sport every trimester along with the academic programs. But I tried to play these sports but just couldn't make it through some of the conditioning requirements. So of course, to those other teenagers, it was that I quit the sport during those times. But to me, it was because I just needed to rehab my back. And because I was a freshman, I wasn't allowed to necessarily be in the gym all the time. That was allowed for the juniors and seniors, the older classmen, but not the younger. So I was given a special request, and that's kind of how it started, my exercise patterns and everything. But I wasn't spending that time gaining the relationships on the field, on the sports field. I only was restricted to those relationships based on the classroom. So it was a little more challenging because I was only given truly 50% of my time was dedicated to making relationships.
Yeah, because the other kids get to play the sport all day together, practice, all that, and you don't get to be involved in that.
Right.
That had to be incredibly challenging. And you're away from home.
Yes, and I'm away from home, and mixer with a girls' school was a sign-up sheet. A trip to the mall was a sign-up sheet.
Wow.
So, and I had to wear this back brace for 2 years, and I was only able to take it off when I went to bed or took a shower.
Wow. So how did the other boys treat you with a back brace on, and the girls for that matter?
There were tough times. Girls, it wasn't so bad. It was just tough to get relationships because you didn't have any girls on campus since it was an all-boys school. But as far as the interaction with the other guys, because you were based on a schedule, the lunchroom doors would open, at that precise time they were supposed to open. So everybody's kind of gathering around the lunchroom doors, and they open, and you all herd in like cattle. And at those times, if I was close to the doors or somewhere, we're all talking around and everything, and some of the guys would kind of knock on my back brace, like, with their hands, like you'd knock on a front door. So that was kind of hard because, of course, you're being made fun of for what you got on. But
Yeah.
the gym time definitely helped, and I continued that gym time even when I was at home during the summer periods. I mean, most of my friends were in their 30s and 40s because when I went home, I started to develop strength and hung out at the gym. And a lot of quote unquote kids aren't really in the gym, but the guys that are 20, 30, 40-year-olds, after 5 o'clock, that's where they go. So I was able to really surround myself with an older, more mentally advanced or positive thinking group of people. And that complemented, of course, the school that I was at, but it also made me really think about things that were important to where I wanted to be mentally, and maintain my physicality in my life and my discipline. So I feel like that's where my discipline really started to take shape.
That's amazing. So you were able to go to the gym, kind of that was kind of like your peaceful place. And then while there, you made all these connections with older people who had maybe a little bit more emotional intelligence than your classmates at the time. And that sounds like that really, really helped you and really helped shape who you are today. So in that moment, at what age were you when you decided, that's it, I'm going to take this to the next level and I'm going to start doing some competitions?
I decided that when I was 16 and a half. That's when I went to my last doctor's appointment, and I was told I didn't have to wear the back brace anymore. Congratulations. But there wasn't any party or anything. It was just kind of, on one side, it was the fear of having to potentially have metal rods put in my spine had been released. So that was a roller coaster, but also I didn't want that to be the finish line. I wanted to see how far I could do this exercise and nutrition thing. I had studied it like I was at Princeton for 2 years and learned about the intricacies of it, how important it was to the body, health and wellness, and how it domino effects into the mental capacities that we have to achieve, and our focus and our sleep patterns, and everything just goes hand in hand. I learned all these things at such a young age that I wanted to see how far I could take it. So I turned to the competition side, or at least the interest in it at that time.
Wow, 16 and a half. What a major, major decision in your life. So can you share with the listeners some insights, some challenges that you faced both physically and mentally while preparing? For those of you that are not familiar with competitions, and I'll have Zeke go into more detail, you have to go on a serious diet and log everything and track it all for weeks and weeks and weeks before you can even walk on the stage. So imagine all that effect that has on you, both mentally and physically. So if you could tell the listeners a little bit more about those challenges.
Sure. I think, first of all, there's a stigma around the look that a bodybuilder would have. Some of those stigmas are valid, but then also at the same time, I think that it's important to know that any sport is going to take time to train at. Most sports are team sports, and this is just an individualized sport. So if you think of Olympics, how often do they happen? They happen once every 4 years. So somebody builds up 4 years of their life in order to compete, or will be chosen first, and then to compete for one of 3 positions, where this is something that typically takes someone between 12 and 16 weeks of preparation, and that is the correct way to do it, where it's not a crash diet. You're not losing more weight than is natural to the body to lose. You're doing it more holistically, but it definitely makes you change your life. I mean, if you're somebody that's a 9-to-5 employee, you're meal prepping and eating specific things all day long. It's no more trips with the work team out to a pizza restaurant or down the street. I mean, none of that really exists. And if you went, you're taking your meals. I mean, I remember I was taking my own food to Thanksgiving one time. So
the self-discipline.
Right.
How do you sustain the self-discipline for so long?
It has to be a personal inner drive. There has to be a reason why you're choosing to do the things that you do. And that is what really has helped me, because I think it has to do with your life history and your past too. There might be things that happen in an individual's life that are traumatic, like let's say it's a divorce or a sudden death of a family member, or something that's unexpected, a job loss. I mean, you have the choice of feeling sorry for yourself and sitting around and binge drinking or watching TV all day long or starting to play video games, and then or you have the idea of just taking a deep breath and saying, okay, well, what can I go and do from here that's going to make me a better person? Wow. It doesn't have to be something that changes the world, but it's enough to reflect back on the self-respect that you have for yourself to choose decisions that are going to make you advance just a little bit better each day.
So you just said so many amazing things in that statement. Oh my goodness. If you're listening, I really would encourage you to rewind that because it was so good. He talked about self-respect for yourself. If you're going through something traumatic, everyone's going to experience something traumatic in life. We all know life is not rainbows and unicorns every day. You're going to experience some hard days, but you can also make that decision. Are you just going to binge drink? Are you going to throw away your health? Where is that self-respect? Where is that self-worth? So in situations that are challenging and they seem daunting, everyone always has a choice. And here, Zeke did have a challenging childhood with the physical, the different physicalities that had occurred to him in high school while he's at boarding school, high pressure all over the place. But he made this decision. He said that's enough because he had such high self-respect. So can you talk to us? Where did that self-respect come from? And how were you able to put yourself first?
I think that putting myself first came mainly from it was mixed in with self-respect and knowing where I came from in my teenage years. The drive and the passion I had from my dad. I mean, he always believed in me, and just as long as you don't quit something, I think that's the main takeaway. Things are always going to be challenging, but just never quit. And those words always resonated in the back of my mind, giving it 110% of what you're doing. It doesn't have to be something, like I said earlier, that's changing the world, but as long as it's something that your heart and your passion is into, everything else will fall into place. Helping people with your story, and that story might not be much right now to you, but if you can think of the things on a piece of paper that you've been successful in, the things that have really mattered to you the most, whether they're quotes or takeaways that you've had, those things can start to build your self-esteem back up and make you into a better person.
I love it, love it, love it. So we're going to fast forward to when you were in a world competition. I'm not talking like Tampa. I'm not talking Kansas City. This is the entire world. You went to a world competition. You were number 2 in the entire world. That is unbelievable. And so if you could tell the listeners, how did you get there? How were you able to maintain your mentality to be that strong, to get to that point? And how did you manage your stress, your anxiety, and the pressures that came along with that?
I feel like a lot of the mental aspects of success come from cognitive restructuring, identifying and
yes,
the challenging negative thought patterns, replacing them with more positive and realistic ones.
Yes.
Also, I mean, my brother used to race open wheel and racing, and this is automotive, and he would always walk the track, and the purpose that a driver does that is because he looks at the turns with his own feet instead of being in a car at a certain speed, whether it's 30 miles an hour he's going around the track or 120. If you're walking it with that kind of a vision, you can start to see where you look at landmarks. Like a driver always looks ahead. He looks down the road. He never looks right in front of his wheels because you're going to end up wrecking. But if you're looking ahead and turning your head a little bit earlier than the turn actually happens, you're looking into the turn before you actually turn the car. So being able to predestine or develop routines, visualization, mental rehearsal. An athlete always has visualization in what he's trying to do. It prepares that person for the actual performance. It helps build confidence. It can reduce performance-related anxiety.
Yes.
If you're a 9-to-5 employee or a C-level employee and you're having to speak in front of groups, and that may have been the weak part of your resume, being able to be prepared and come up with acronyms, for your success too. I've really found that helps, faith, fitness, and food, F's for me, things an acronym that can help you remember certain, building blocks of what you're wanting to talk about or teach about.
So did you use guided imagery? Did you imagine yourself winning? Like, did you go to the stage before the show?
I did. I definitely walked in there when nobody was there and just visualized myself being there, being in the presence of an empty auditorium, because then you already aware of where the lights are, where the seats are, what
Absolutely.
The seats look like, what the colors look like. All of that stuff helps you be more comfortable because then you feel like you're at home.
Yes. And that also will reduce that anxiety because you already know what to expect in that way. And I know Michael Phelps does that before his races. He would visualize him winning. He would sit in a room and he would do that before every single competition. And guess what? He won them.
Yeah.
But it's very powerful. That is such a powerful takeaway. Were there any other practices that you did to kind of calm yourself or reduce that anxiety leading up to this major competition?
Sure. There were breathing techniques that I used. I also rested and thought about my routines. So parallel to somebody who's speaking is thinking about the words that they're going to say or outlining, those acronyms like I was mentioning. But for me, it was more of just being at peace and restructuring my mind and thinking of success that whole time prior to.
Did you keep your life very calm? A lot of people have a lot of chaos around them. And in order to perform at these levels, or even just to perform in daily life, just to get up and go to work, but you have so much chaos at home, or there's chaos all over, there's drama. Did you work towards having just a very calm environment and keeping everything like without any drama?
I feel like turning off the noise is really important nowadays. The world's getting a little more consumed with social media.
Absolutely.
There's a lot more time on our devices. I feel like the family structure is also being taken away.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how many people do you know had a dinner as a family as you were growing up versus having, your peers that have dinner as a family now? I feel like there's leadership that's lacking when things like that start to fail. And I think it all stems from mental challenges and the way that we're all growing up in this world. We need to be able to give back to our youth and really be good mentors and put some of these teachings back into not only pouring into them with, teaching them about finance or teaching them what to do in certain pressure situations, trying to keep them away from a lot of medications.
Oh, yes. Yes.
There's so many more natural ways to overcome certain things, and I try to put that into the teachings I have with my personal training clients as well, and people that I help with weight loss.
That's phenomenal. I am very anti-medication. I understand some people do have to take that just to get to the baseline, but I am not for being on medication for the rest of your life. I think there are a lot of other alternatives, like you mentioned. So as we wrap up the show, 2 final questions. What advice would you give individuals who are considering entering the world of fitness competitions? And what advice do you give just everyday people like myself about nutrition? So I was just telling our producer that I'm so busy and I'm just eating anything, and I know it's bad. So what advice would you give to just an everyday person who's working, who wants to still maintain good health? And what advice would you give someone who wants to enter into the fitness world?
So for my best advice to somebody that we would say is every day, there are 3 things that make the body acidic: our food choices, our liquid choices, and medications. And a body that is acidic or that's toxic is more prone to cancer, is more prone to sickness. So staying hydrated is very important. I've heard just this morning I was talking with a new client, and he said, just drinking water is really hard for me, but I made some suggestions, like you could put some lemon in your water. You could also put a little bit of Himalayan sea salt in the water. That helps change the pH, because you want to make sure that it's closer to an alkaline environment and away from an acidic environment. Also, hormone levels. As men, we think of testosterone as a hormone. Females think of estrogen or progesterone, but leptin is our fat-burning hormone. So let me bridge a gap. If I talk about insulin and glucose, the job of insulin is to go through the bloodstream, chemically bond to glucose, and burn it as fuel. But when that signaling is off, there is a risk of what we coin or what we think of as pre-diabetes. Same thing with leptin and fat. Leptin's job is to bond to fat and burn it as fuel. But if that signaling is off, that's where people start to store fat. So then your cravings are there. That midnight run to the pantry, even if it's a 100-calorie popcorn or something that we would think is good to have late at night or okay to have at night, it's still a carbohydrate-driven event, and some of those are the biggest metabolism busters. So I would say to make yourself more aware of things that can help keep you healthy, but not extend you past where your body should be for your age, hormonally and chemically. And that's what our program does. But then to the athlete, I would say to just focus on what you're trying to do. Find a good coach that you believe in and that you trust, and have them mentor you, have them pour into you. There's so many things out there to think of, especially when you're starting to diet and you get closer to the competition stage. Your chemical balances are going to be off. Females are going to miss menstrual cycles. Males, their libido is super low. I mean, we think of these bodies as being this goal of perfection, but it's really the most attainable. It's really the hardest attainable thing to have. You can't sustain that for longer than 12 hours.
Yes.
So when you reach that certain point, it's not something that you'll be able to keep. But if you know what you're doing and you have the ability to get to that point, I would say focus on a coach, and they can help you.
I know I said that was the last question, but I have one more question. When you finished your competition, because I know the diets are so restrictive and they are so particular, then you finished the competition. What did you do? Did you just eat like all these Big Macs and pizza, or how did you go back into eating normally?
That's a great question. So some people just splurge right after, and then they don't ever come back. And that's another kind of downside of this mindset of the athlete that competes in those kind of competitions. But I think overall we're pretty healthy people. I was speaking with a fellow athlete yesterday, and there was a sub at Publix, and she's like, I'm not eating that processed food. And I'm like, okay, I'll eat it. You know, like it depends on how strict you want to be.
Yes.
And how often you want to make those choices. But I mean, in proper nutrition, you can certainly have a cheat meal. We call it a cheat meal once a week, you know, go out to a burger bar, have burger and fries, whatever your thing is, you know, and just enjoy yourself. But if you can stay strict to something, you know, the rest of the week, those other 6 days, then you're going to stay on your goals, and you'll be happier with the way you look and happier with the way you feel, and you'll be a healthier person.
Which, okay, this is the final, I swear. If you are eating better, you're feeling better, you're looking better, how would that tie into the mental health? Whereas if you're not caring about what you're eating and you are binging, you're putting lots of alcohol in your system, I mean, you can see where that ties into the mental health, how you feel, so on and so forth. So what have you seen just in life when you see people are not really caring about what they eat? How would that tie into the effects of their mental health?
It's huge. I mean, there's hormones are released and suppressed within our mind and our mentality, you know, clear thinking, brain fog, things like that can happen and be present in the body when your nutrition levels are off, when your hormone levels are off, when you lack sleep, when there's high periods of stress. Having the ability to understand what you're doing and what you're eating, what you're putting in your body from a natural perspective, I think is huge. You know, half a teaspoon of baking soda sounds crazy as it is, but you know, if you're sore in the gym, you could take half a teaspoon of baking soda into your workout mix, whatever that is, and that can help curb soreness. So
did not know that.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Oh, well, I'm going to coin the phrase Zeke with the physique. For the listeners out there, you're going to have to Google him to see him. But Zeke, how can people find you? How can they go to your website, go to your Instagram? Tell them how can they get a hold of you?
My Instagram is SurrealBodyHN. That's the first name of my business and the second name of my business. So SURREAL, body, BODYHN. SurrealBodyHN is my Instagram, and then website is my first and last name, ZekeSamples.com.
And we will also post that on our Instagram and also in the description. So everyone, I highly recommend you go check out Zeke Samples. He's amazing. It's very important that you have great nutrition to link with your positive mental health outlook on everything in life. We know all the days, some days can be very challenging. And again, the whole premise of this podcast is to break the mental health stigma. And you heard it from Zeke himself, a very strong man. If other men were to see him, they would think, oh, he probably had the most perfect life ever. But you just cannot think that about people. You never know what they're going through, what they've been through. So again, you are not alone. There are people here that can help. Zeke will help with nutrition, which is a complete correlation to your mental health. So thank you so much for supporting us and listening to season 1 of the Just Help Out Mindset podcast. I cannot wait to see you in season 2.